financial instruments video series. Today we're going to be focusing mainly on the impairment of financial assets. So I hope that you remember the syllabus scope, and I've referred you to the scope document on my CAA in the previous videos. So if you haven't gone to it yet, make sure that you actually go to the scope document and look at it, so you know what's at awareness level and what has been excluded, as well as what you need to know in preparation of your exams. Okay, so I also hope that you've gone through the scope of your IAS 32 and IFRS 9, which is found in paragraph 4 of IAS 32 and paragraph 9 of IFRS, paragraph 2.1 of IFRS 9, sorry. So what are the lecture objectives? So I'm sure we've gone through these lecture objectives in the previous lectures. Today we're going to be focusing mainly on impairment, as I highlighted earlier. So you need to understand why we need to impair financial assets, and then you also need to understand which financial assets are subject to impairment and how we would impair those financial assets. This means that you need to know credit risk, what credit risk is, what expected credit losses are. You need to have an understanding of the 12-month expected credit losses as well as lifetime expected credit losses. Okay, so why do we impair, right? So with financial assets, we have a right to contractual cash flows from the party holding the financial liability, right? But then there may be a risk that we will not actually receive these cash flows, and this risk is what we call credit risk. So your credit risk is defined in Appendix A of IFRS 7. Make sure you know where that is. And so we impair to take into account the risk of default. So we're saying in terms of your IFRS 7, credit risk is risk that one party to a financial instrument will cause a financial loss to the other party by failing to discharge an obligation. So basically saying you're holding a financial asset and you're entitled to some contractual cash flows, but there's a risk that you might not actually receive all those contractual cash flows. So now when you're recognizing your financial asset, you need to take into account the fact that there's actually that credit risk. So that is the reason why we impair our financial assets. So the keywords, there's your credit risk and the financial loss. So there's that risk that you might not receive those cash flows. So I want us to look at which assets are subject to IFRS 9 impairment requirements. So you will find this in your IFRS 9 in paragraph 5.5.1, and this is basically your amortized cost and fair value through OCI financial instruments, and so they refer you to 4.12 and 4.12a, which we dealt with in the previous recording. So this is basically your amortized cost and your fair value through OCI. You also need to impair your list receivable, any contract assets, and any loan commitments. So I'm sure that you've noted that your fair value through P&L financial assets have actually not been listed under the assets that are subject to impairment. So why is that? So with your fair value through P&L financial instruments, confirm you're holding them for trading. You're actually not holding them to collect contractual cash flows, which therefore means that you don't have that credit risk, and you should therefore not impair your fair value through P&L financial assets. So just make sure you know where to find this where to find the assets to be impaired in your IFRS 9. I've put the reference down for you. Make sure you open your standard and you flag it. Oh, so financial guarantee contracts are also subject to impairment. So the moment you acquire your financial asset, right, confirm you're now entitled to your contractual cash flows at defined dates. But then from initial recognition, confirm there's already that risk that the person that is holding the financial instrument, the person that you've actually lent the money to might not actually pay you back. So we're saying there's credit risk from day one. So our impairment is going to be based on the expected loss model, which takes into account that from initial recognition to the day that the financial asset actually now matures, you need to actually look at what is the credit risk that is associated with my financial asset and should I impair. So there is a need to constantly assess for credit risk and recognize as you take note of the presence of credit risk throughout the lifetime of the lifetime of the financial asset, right? The time that you're holding it to maturity. So I want us to get into how to determine your credit risk, right? So with credit risk, we're saying we're assessing the borrower's ability to pay, right? So to determine credit risk, you will need to look at things like the credit risk, the credit history of the borrower, their capacity to repay, the capital that they have to repay as well as the loan conditions and any associated collateral. Because this information then provides you with the likelihood that you will or will not receive contractual cash flows. So I hope that you now have an understanding of why we impair financial assets, or which financial assets we impair, and how to determine your credit risk. Please note that for tests and exams, you will actually not be asked to determine credit risk. They'll just tell you whether there's credit risk or not. So this is just for you to have an appreciation. So determining credit risk is just for you to have an appreciation of how people in industry actually come up with the credit risk of a borrower. So this is part 3.1 of impairment. I think this video series, the impairment video series, will come in 5 parts. So thank you for your time. I hope you then go on and watch videos 3.2 to 3.5.